Good evening, guys. How you doing? It's a great night. So I'll introduce myself first off. I know most of you guys here, but I'm Jim Lathe, and this is my partner in crime and everything else, Domingo Martinez. So, and I just remembered there's one thing on the equipment list that I did not list. We're going to go through a bunch of equipment that in my personal opinion, you should have. But one of the things that's not on there, probably the most important equipment that you can have is a good partner. So, and she's been the reason why we're out here. So anyways, I will. I want to tell you guys first off that we have been living aboard for only 4 years, and we have been cruising in Mexico and Sea of Cortez for 2 years. So full disclosure, we're not experts by any stretch of the imagination. When you get down there, you'll see what people have been doing this for many, many, many years. But I do want to kind of share some of our insights that we've had. I know there's a lot of pictures of us, what we've done, and I try to make it so it's not like what we did during our summer vacation type of display. So anytime we're going through this, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, because there's going to be a lot of things that we don't cover that you may have questions about. Right? So the first thing I want to tell you, there's really, in our opinion, there's really two types of cruisers. There's a lot of variations in between, but the far extremes is there's what I call the retirement cruisers, and those are the people that have saved up all their lives. They've bought the right boat, quote unquote, the right boat, a brand new, $500,000 boat. They bought all the equipment that you're supposed to have, again, in quotes, because if you read all the magazines, they'll tell you you're supposed to have everything, a life raft and a radar and all the safety equipment and all that stuff. But you got to keep in mind that people that are telling you you need all this stuff are also the people that's telling us. So some of the stuff is important, some of it may not be so important. So, and then there's the other type of extreme, the other side of the spectrum, and that's the budget cruisers. And those are the people that just left before they're even ready. And they didn't have all the stuff that they're supposed to have, right? And that's kind of what we are. We left a little earlier than we probably should have, if not everything that we really should have had. But one thing we've learned is you really don't need all that stuff. It's not as hard as people make it out to be. The big thing is, if you've read Part A, you guys heard of Part A as the sailors, they've written a lot of cruising on a budget books, that kind of stuff.
Lynn and Larry?
Yeah, Lynn and Larry. And I'll tell you right now that they're right. The idea is leave soon. Don't wait until you have everything. You really don't need everything that you have. So we're going to go through a lot of stuff that we call ourselves budget or extreme budget cruisers. And we are working cruisers, so we work along the way. We didn't wait till we had a big huge thing. We had all the money saved up and big retirement fund like this. And you really don't need to, really. It's easier than people make it out to be. We actually left San Diego. It took a while to get to San Diego, but when we left San Diego to go to Mexico, we only had $800. And that wasn't planned. We actually had quite a bit of money before we left here, but we ran into some issues when we got to San Diego. Basically, our steering and our autopilot exploded. So we had to replace all that, and it took up most of the money we had. And then we were in San Diego, we had $800, we had two choices. We had one choice is to come back to San Francisco with our tail between our legs and start working again and build up some more money, or just to go to Mexico and wing it. And that's basically what we did. We went to Mexico and we winged it. And we realized, to tell you the truth, the first 6 months, we were rough. There was 2 times when we got down to $0. We were in Mexico in a foreign country, but we realized it's really not that hard, especially when we started meeting other people that were cruising on a budget and working cruisers and that kind of stuff. So it's a little easier than most people make it out to. So on our boat, of course, there's me, Domingo, who you just met. Mika is our pit bull that we brought with us when we left. She's a very small pit bull. She's not your little pit bull. And then we adopted a Mexican bud, and his name is Bean. We left from San Francisco to the mainland of Mexico, and our next stop is Panama. We definitely have learned that we can make it all the way around the world, and we don't have to worry about money at all because we're working cruisers, so we can find jobs along the way. The key is get some skills that are valuable to other cruisers. That's been the key thing. So the first thing I want to cover is, this is just us right before we left. With Mika, that's our little pit bull. And so the boat that you want to buy, by the way, I'm not going to go too much into the vessel. And the main reason why is because it's sort of like talking about religion. You ask a lot of cruisers and they'll have a bunch of different things. My main suggestions would be buy a seaworthy boat, buy something that you can shorthand, which means if I'm sick or if I get injured, I know that you can handle the boat all by yourself. So that's really important that you can single-handed or shorthand the boat. A lot of people buy boats that are just too big for them. Buy the smallest boat that you feel comfortable with, that is seaworthy. There's a lot of websites that'll show you, what boat to buy and some good vessels and that type of stuff. I would suggest if you're going to do this on a budget, that you buy an older boat. The older boats in the late 60s, early 70s are built really heavy. And as long as you can upgrade the systems, you can get a really older boat really cheaply. We bought ours for $18,000, which is, at that point, it's almost, if it sank, it doesn't matter. I can go back here and work for a year, make another 18 grand, buy another boat, go out cruising again. But the boats and the older boats are really built thick and heavy. And newer boats, if you were going to get a really good offshore boat with equivalent seaworthiness and strength and that kind of stuff, it's probably going to cost you $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for the same type of vessel on a newer boat. So just make sure you check out the boat, have a survey done, that kind of stuff. So, and again, one thing I'll tell you, these are all opinions, and I realized when we go cruising that every cruiser has a different opinion about it, especially anchoring. So if you get into anchoring and cruisers, don't even start because everybody has, this is the best anchor, absolutely. So, but the same thing with boats. So that's that. Another picture, but let's just look at it. We bought it. This is us getting the boat ready. The boat was in great condition, except for it had original 1971 electrical system, which you can imagine was really outdated, and the plumbing system and the tank. So I ripped everything out and put everything in brand new, which is beneficial in two ways. One is that I know that everything's top notch and brand new stuff as far as electrical and plumbing. And if it breaks, I can fix it because I put it in myself. And if you guys are a little apprehensive about doing that kind of work yourself, I'll tell you that I had no idea what I was doing myself. None whatsoever. But I read a lot. I started to do it. I hired an expert to come down and give me some advice before I finished it. Finished it up. He came down for another couple hours, made sure I did it right. And so far, after 4 years, we haven't had any issues. So that's it. It's a Cal Cruising 36, by the way. The only thing we really had to buy for it before we left was a new sail, but other than and the electrical pump. So, and keep going. And that's us under sail. And you can see one of the things that we're going to go through is a dinghy. And this, I'll just show you this dinghy. Well, we have a better picture of it. So go ahead. This is the interior of the boat. It's a old ocean racer. So it's really skinny. It only has a 10-foot beam or 10.5-foot beam. And most boats at 36 feet are going to have a 32-foot beam or so. So it's kind of skinny. It doesn't have a lot of room inside, but it's not too bad. Yeah, there's Bean. There's our new dog. This is the settee area. This is the dog's room. And it's the B berth is up here, and then right in between, this is actually supposed to be a queen set berth for 2 people, but the dogs have taken over. That's their home. So one of the things I'll tell you, minimum equipment. This is, again, my opinion. There's several things that this is all you really need to go cruising in Mexico. One is I would definitely recommend an E-Bird. If you don't know what that is, emergency positioning indicator radio beacon. And you can get them relatively cheap. Actually, the ones we have are the personal. We just have a couple of personal ones, which are just as good as the big full-size one, but they're a lot less expensive. The only difference is the batteries won't last as long once you set it off. Coast Guard required safety. That's supposed to be gear. Yeah, that's a kit. Yeah, and you know that's the life jackets and the flares and so forth and so on. The dinghy, which may be modified to serve as a life raft, and I'm going to go over that a little bit later, because we don't have a life raft on the boat yet, and we probably will get one when we cross oceans. But right now, I'm kind of thinking about we might have a dinghy that doubles as a life raft, just to save room and cost and that type of stuff. And we'll go over some ideas about that in a minute. 2 appropriate anchors with rode. I would say 2 is a minimum. We have 3, and appropriate anchors. And rode, by the way, is anything that's attached to an anchor, rope, or chain. I would recommend at least 150 feet of chain, and then about 150 feet of rope as a minimum for your main anchor, and then also for your backup anchor. For our stern, we have that for both of our forward anchors, and we have the same for our stern. The grade 40 high test is, in my opinion, the best way to go. It's a little bit more expensive, but if you go 1 grade down, which a lot of cruisers have, the weight for strength ratio is tremendous. So you save a lot of weight if you go with the grade 40 high test. We just have 5/16 chain, but the main thing is the anchoring system is your insurance, because that is the thing that's going to save you no matter what. So get an oversized anchor, an oversized chain if you can, because that's going to keep your boat safe. We've had a lot of situations where if we had less anchor or less chain, you know, smaller size, we would have lost our boat several times. But because we have a very deep anchor, it holds us no matter what. We didn't talk about that, right? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Yeah, absolutely. Compass, 2 GPSs. We have 4 on our boat. We have 1 main one, and we have 3 handhelds. And we've only used our main one, but I'm always backed up just in case that one goes out, because we lose our electrical on the boat. We have our handhelds as backup. But the other thing is, always be prepared if any of this stuff fails. And what I mean by that is, and we don't do this, we haven't got to this point yet, but the GPSs, if the GPSs fail, you know, you need to have some other way of maneuvering the boat and navigating. Make sure that you know, and we practice a lot with stuff like bed reckoning. We're about to get a sextant and start practicing with that just as a backup. VHF radio, 2 or 3. We brought 3 with us, and 2 of them already failed on us, and we're down to 1, 15 more. Working sails, in especially a light air sail, because I mean, the Sea of Cortez is gorgeous, and the weather is beautiful most of the time. But there's really light winds most of the time. So it's 5 to 15 knots. And a light air sail will really get you, really help you out a lot. Cockpit shading, especially in the summer, if you don't have shade in your cockpit, you're dead. I mean, it gets really, really warm. So cockpit shading of some sort is probably a necessity. And 1 set of charts, paper charts, and then a cruising guide. We suggest the Sean and Heather's cruising guide because it has lots of pictures, aerial shots before you go into an anchorage. It's nice to have an aerial shot and that type of stuff. So they do a great job.
We also use Charlie's charts a lot too.
Yeah, we did use Charlie's charts a lot, and I just hands down prefer Heather and Sean. But we actually used Charlie's charts for the first year until we found Sean and Heather. These are all the things that are nice to have. If you have extra money, if you got all the basics, you know, you can go on to the next one. So solar panels, 300 watts or more. We have 300 watts, and it provides all the power that we need. If we had a bigger cruising boat with more systems on it, we probably want more solar power. A wind generator, we just added a wind generator, and that's mainly for the winter months when there's not as much sun. And so that keeps all our batteries topped off 100% of the You don't want to have to run your engine all the time. And you'll see some of the bigger cruising boats. We see it all the time. The bigger cruising boats with all these systems and all the top-notch stuff. They're running their motor every other day just to charge the batteries back up. So smart charger for your battery system. When I hooked up the electrical, we actually installed 4 smart chargers because I wanted backup. So I have 2 solar arrays, each on a different smart charger. The wind generators on a smart charger, and then also on a separate system I have, if we ever have everything else fails, we have a Honda generator that can charge up that battery. Smart charger, you've seen the chargers that they have a car battery, right? And it's just the garage chargers. Well, if you use those, which, by the way, our boat came with them, it will kill your batteries. The smart chargers charge the battery, they sense the charge in the batteries, and then they charge the batteries at different levels until the batteries are properly topped off. And then once they're topped off, it lowers the rate of charge to keep them maintained. And there's lots of different brands. Just get the newest. They're all really great. Most of them work really well. SSB radio is like a ham radio without the license. It's good for long distance communication. And again, I would say that would be a good thing to have. We don't. We have a ham radio. We've started to hook it up, but we never finished it because right now we don't have any use for it, and I'm actually considering selling it. But we're not right sure. But it is a great backup for emergency situations once you get offshore, that kind of stuff, because those you can contact anybody anywhere in the world for help. And actually nowadays with the ham radio, if you get a ham license, you can send emails for a charge, even if you're 3,000 miles offshore. You can't. Refrigeration is kind of nice to have. There's a lot of cruisers there that don't. We decided that was one of the luxuries we wanted. If your boat only has an ice box, which ours started with, we were going to make that into a real refrigeration unit, the ice box that came with it. But after calculating all the costs, it's going to cost over $3,000 to get our ice box into a nice refrigerator. A marine refrigerator. So what we decided to do is buy an Edge Star, which is an AC/DC powered standalone unit. And it was a great purchase because it's lasted for almost 4 years, and it really is really stingy on power. It doesn't use a lot of power, but we can turn it down to a freezer level or to refrigeration level, and it's huge. It's much bigger than most refrigerators on boats, but it seems to use less power. Yeah, the downside is it's big. It's probably about that long and about that wide and about that deep. So it holds a lot, but our boat came with a double berth, which you saw the dogs were in, and then on the other side is a single berth, and we just put it right there. So, and it fits really well, and it doesn't use a lot of power. Water maker, again, we don't have a water maker. And if you're going to do this on a budget and you don't have a lot of money to spend, I would recommend skipping the water maker. Water, especially in the Sea of Cortez, is available now everywhere.
We also carry a handheld water filter.
Yeah. Filtration system on your water system is a great idea. Water makers, the problem with water makers is you don't use them on a regular basis. You have to do a lot of work, pickle them and set them aside, that kind of stuff. So every time you don't use them for a while, they start to grow bacteria and that kind of stuff. So water makers are, and they use a lot of power. So again, and that's a system that if you don't know how to fix it yourself, you're going to pay for somebody to fix it. We have the philosophy, if we can't fix it, it's not going to be in the head. We don't want to have to pay people to fix stuff on their head. And so that's why we don't have, that's one of the reasons we don't have a water maker. We also realize that you only have 80 gallons of holding for water. And we can stretch that out to last 2 months.
2 months is our max.
Yeah, 2 months was our maximum 80 gallons of water. The trick is use a lot of seawater to clean the clothes, clean the dishes, and just do a final rinse and fresh water. And then save everything else for dinner. And I'll tell you, it sounds gross now, but really you get away with taking 1 or 2 showers a week because you're swimming every day.
Every day.
Yeah, and then every time you finish swimming, you're rinsing off. So we usually about once a week we'll take a shower and we'll listen. Most of the time. A windlass, that's of course to pull up your anchor and let it down, that kind of stuff. The issues with windlass is they use a lot of power.
Meaning electric ones.
Electric ones, yes, thank you. Electric windlass, they use a lot of power.
Really exercise.
Yeah, and we don't have electric windlass, we have a manual, which, to tell you the truth, we don't even use. Most of it's just by hand. We pull in the anchor by hand, we let it out by hand. The windlass has been sort of, I'm glad we didn't upgrade to the electric windlass because it sucks the power and I'm in much better shape because I'm always going there. Wi-Fi booster, I would definitely recommend because at Anchorage, so we anchor all the time. We rarely, if ever, use a marina. We used it twice.
In the 2 years that we were there, we were in green.
Yeah, and one of it was because of the hurricane that was coming.
And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the hurricane. But if you're at Anchor, the Wi-Fi booster, it's amazing. Wi-Fi is available in almost every major city, even a lot of minor, small towns in New Mexico. So if you're at Anchor and you have a Wi-Fi booster, you can get internet almost anywhere if you have a really good Wi-Fi booster. Autopilot is, in my opinion, a must-have. We didn't have it for the first 2 years. Hand steering all the time is difficult. But ever since we got the Autopilot, we basically use it all the time because it steers the boat better than a human can. In the new, especially the hydraulic, we have a Raymarine hydraulic Autopilot, and it's amazing. It's super smart. It will figure out the wave patterns within just a couple of minutes. And at first, when you turn it on, it operates a lot. It's moving back and forth, and you can hear it operating. And then it starts to predict the waves, and it starts to turn a little bit ahead of time. And it starts working less and less and less. And then it just holds its own course and it's straight. And it holds its course much better than a human could. So an autopilot is probably one of the things that I would say, yeah. Depth sounder, again, we didn't have it for the first 2 years.
We send a rat,
Lead line.
a lead line.
You guys know what a lead line is? It's a big lead on a rope, basically. And you just check to see your depth. And that's what we used for the first 2 years. And then we decided that it would be nice just to be able to see what the depth is. So we upgraded to the rest of the world. We got a depth sounder. AIS is something that I would love to have, but I haven't upgraded to yet, which is silly because it's really easy. It's automated identification system. So on your chart plotter, you'll be able to see boats that have a transponder, which in the United States are all commercial vessels. Quite a few private vessels now have AIS. So on your chart plotter, all the boats that are in the area that have an AIS transponder will show up on your chart plotter. In Mexico, not a lot of commercial vessels have an AIS transponder, so it may not be that useful.
There are websites that you can use now that don't require for you to have an AIS, but you can also see the vessels around you that you have.
Yeah, there's an app for that.
Yeah, there's that.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Chart plotter I just covered. A nice base unit chart plotter as opposed to handhelds. Kind of nice because the screen is large and it helps a lot. Inflatable hard bottom dinghy with a 10 horsepower outboard. So we actually used a hard dinghy for the first year. Well, 3 years, yeah, the first year cruising, right? And without an outboard. So we rode in and out all the time at every anchorage. Again, by the way, I lost about 25 pounds from the time that we left here. Within a year, I lost 25 pounds. It was a lot of rowing. But once we upgraded to an inflatable with a really fast and really powerful outboard, it makes your cruising area has expanded tremendously because it's really fast. You get to a really nice snorkeling site. If you see whales out there, you can zip out there. But when we were rowing, get out there. So yeah, chasing a whale and rowing. Yeah, kayaks are better. Yeah. Absolutely, you got to have kayaks in your boat. Stand-up paddle boards, those things are great. Yeah. And you'll see that in the wind and speed instruments. We did have those on our boat, and a lot of our boats here at OCSC have them, so you can just look down there and see what the wind is doing, speed-wise and direction-wise. After the hurricane, that all blew off, and I was really adamant about replacing all that stuff, and I realized, you know, I can look out and see what the wind's doing. I know what wind speed looks like on the water. I know what the wind's coming from. We never replaced any of that, so this is kind of like, you may not need that, but it's nice to have. Radar, again, we don't have that, especially in Mexico. Here in the Bay, it's a little more important. We're cruising down the coast because we have a lot of fog and stuff like that. But that's just an upgrade that you may or may not need. So most of the stuff on this list is stuff that you really, if you want to go now, then you really don't need this. You can get it down there, that kind of stuff. And the key is, if you want to go now, don't wait. Don't wait till you get all your equipment and all the stuff that they say. Just do it. You can get the stuff later. By the way, most of the stuff that we installed on our boat, we installed after we left. Yeah, yeah. We left in October because we were going to leave like a year or two later. But Dominguez said, "Heck no, let's get the hell out of here. Just buy all the equipment, throw it on the boat, we'll install it on the way." And that's basically what we did. A life raft. Again, if you're going to cross oceans, I think that's a pretty good idea. But just cruising down the coast, it's a big expense, and you gotta recertify those every 2 years, I believe it is, and that's also a big expense. But if you're going to cross an ocean, that may not be a bad idea. And also, you can rent them. There's places that rent life rafts. But my opinion, and what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try, and I'll have a picture of a really good dinghy / life raft. So it's dual purpose. You can use it as your dinghy, and then if you get in trouble, you can use it as a life raft. I'll cover that in a minute. Water toys are super important. Like I said, stand-up paddle boards, all that kind of stuff. Because when you get down there, you're going to spend a lot of time in the water. Definitely. The water is 85, 90 degrees in summer, so it's like a hot tub or a swimming pool. Spare parts for your engine, water maker, head, electrical, that kind of stuff. So having everything on your boat, spare parts like a spare alternator for your engine, spare belts, a lot of tools, that kind of stuff is, especially if you're the type of person that we are, the type of people that we are, where we fix everything. We don't hire anybody to fix everything. Having a lot of spare parts is important. But in all honesty, you can get most of the stuff in Mexico now. This may not have been true 5, 10 years ago. But most of the stuff you can get now. Oh yeah, the prices.
Way more expensive.
Yeah, the prices are like that.
We need to be underneath, and we took so much stuff with us that we really didn't need now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, a lot of cruisers take a ton of stuff that they don't need. And it's been a boon to us because usually at marine swap meets, they start unloading all the stuff that they brought that they didn't need. And they unload it at swap meets really cheap. So it's really inexpensive to get stuff down there. Also take, hard to get items in Mexico. There's not a bunch, but there's some spices that if you like a lot of specific spices for your food, you might as well get them now because you notice what are the spices that.
One hurricane there's a lot of good Mexican spices that you get tired of eating Mexican food all the time. So with us this time we're taking some cumin, curry, chili, things like that are commonly used that we cook, but we don't find in there. Not even in specialty stores. And another thing is, you don't like meat. We're not eating meat. That's all of it in Mexico. So, we managed to find one bottle of Miracle Whip at our Walmart on their import section one time. But if you are not a mayonnaise person, take your own or learn how to make it.
Yeah.
Because you won't find it there.
The other thing I would recommend is taking some trading and donation items. So, like AA batteries, if you like lobster, you can get a lobster for and yeah, oysters for 2 AA batteries.
What?
Yeah, and the reason why is a lot of these guys that are in remote fishing villages and that kind of stuff, they have handheld shark lights, and that's where they find their stuff. But batteries are hard to get in these remote areas, so they want AA batteries, and they have more lobster that they can deal with, so they will trade a lobster for 2 AA batteries. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, whatever they're catching, we'll trade them for batteries. They love batteries. They need them. Also, for donations, school supplies, like art supplies, that kind of stuff for schools, are really needed in small villages. And if you bring them, you'll be a hero. You may not get anything in trade. That's not the trading stuff, but you'll be a hero and you're going to help a lot of people out. So we brought a lot, but we're going to get a lot more. So go to the dollar store and buy pencils and paper pads and coloring books and stuff that they use in school and all levels of school. Really needed there. And other things like, and I hate cigarettes, but they'll really trade a lot for cigarettes. They're hard to get in these small towns, so they love cigarettes. But and then beer, if you have a few extra beers, that kind of stuff. Anything that you think you might not be able to get in a small village that fishermen might need, you can trade for food real easily. One of the things that we learned, because we had to leave with only $800 and we ran down to $0 2 or 3 times. Trading is awesome. We probably have, as far as consumption material and that kind of stuff, we've probably traded for more than half of what we consume, because that's a big thing. If you bring enough stuff to trade, or if you have enough skills to trade. So Dominga does canvas work and sail repair. So she's like a gold mine down there. Amongst cruisers, that's always needed. So if you can, we have a sailrite sewing machine. She has a sailrite sewing machine. I use it. Yeah, but she's a gold miner. So this is actually, it looks like a life raft, right? This is actually a dinghy. This is called a Portland Pudgy, and that's what it looks like without the life raft issue to it. Go back one. And this is with the life raft section to it. All right. And this is what we probably want to get before we leave. I've seen people. They're sailing dinghies.
I've sailed this.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
Do you like it?
They don't sail well, but they're really fun.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like both ways. There's some people that absolutely love them, and some people are like, I wish I had mine.
The thing is, they're indestructible.
Right.
And
they're unsinkable.
they are.
Yeah, so switch to the next one. Go back to the next
So
one.
their complaint was, it was a couple with 2 daughters. So their complaint was space.
Yeah, space. And you can
Even though
see,
it's certified as a 4-band
yeah, and you can see that if there was me and Dominga there and 2 dogs, it would be quite crowded. But it's the whole walls here are really thick, and there's storage units where actually airtight compartments and that type of stuff. And they do sail okay, and they motor okay as long as this one has an electric motor on there, but you can't have a big huge outboard on this. But the benefit of these is that you can use them as a dinghy and a life raft, so you don't have to buy them. So before we cross an ocean, I'm highly considering getting one of these, and also keeping our inflatable dinghy that we got just recently, just as a backup. But I kind of like that. And there's lots of other options. If you look online for life raft / dinghy or dinghy / life raft, I found just yesterday 5 or 6 different variations, so different types. All right, sailing with dogs. This is a whole new thing. So there's benefits and there's negatives. Anybody have dogs in here? A few people. Most people do, but so sailing with dogs has been a benefit in a lot of ways, and it's been sort of a detriment in some ways. So, and the detriment part is that they're sort of restricting as far as your ability to travel inland and move about. You're not allowed on buses there, so you need to have a car or some way of transporting them around, that type of stuff. Make sure your dogs are well trained. The benefits of having a dog is they're the best protection ever. And I know we have a pit bull which can look pretty fierce when she wants to. But I've noticed that most Mexicans especially the ones that are out and motoring around the boat. They are not afraid of Mexican dogs, but they are petrified of American dogs. And I asked one guy, I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "Because Americans love their dogs and they train them, and the dogs will protect them. But Mexican dogs don't do that because they run loose and they kick sometimes. And, they're afraid of humans. But they've actually saved us a lot of money having these dogs, because there's a big thing now in Mexico, which I kind of have a problem with that. In some of the busier anchorages in the past few years, they've been charging for anchorage, and the Mexican organization, a government organization, is called API. API, yeah. And I don't know what that stands for. It's an acronym or something. But they will collect anchoring fees in certain places like La Paz, Cabo San Lucas. It's pretty much all these things. Yeah, but in some places they'll charge for anchoring fees. And what they do, and how they do this, is they'll come by in their boat, and they'll give you a notice, and they'll say, "You need to go into the API office and pay for your anchoring." So when we see these guys coming, we just stay down below, and Meek is pretty well trained, so we just say, "Tap." And she goes up there and barks at them, and they go away. so they've never given us a notice, so we don't know. So we just claim ignorance. So they're good in some ways, and they're great protection. And I'll tell you, not that they're really needed. The protection issue, a lot of people will kind of tell you that sailing in Mexico may be dangerous, or in other countries per se. And that type of stuff, but we have never had any issues. We actually lived aboard for 2 years here in Berkeley.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
We were at the anchorage in the top, and there was a street of outboard boats. 3 boats anchored right near us had their outboards going off the back of it. We have 3 outboards stored on the back of our boat, but none of our specific because we have 2 outboards. They live right near us. So there is benefit.
Oh yeah,
they definitely earn their food. And they're supposed to
yeah, several times.
But that's like the best way to do for a ratchet track. So it's like,
yeah, that was it. It was stealing some outboards.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. While we were in Berkeley for 2 years, somebody stole our dinghy. Somebody broke into our car and stole some plugs. We had 2 bikes stolen. A couple other thefts, right? While we were 2 years. 2 years in Mexico, nothing. Never had a theft. Never even had an issue. And then on the drive from Guaymas to San Francisco. No, just of course. So we drove from Guaymas to Mexico, or to San Francisco, and we had a lot of people telling us, "Careful driving through Mexico, it can be dangerous." Right? And we drove through small towns, big towns, stopped quite often, never failed anything anywhere near dangerous. The first time we were scared, as far as we were a little not sure about the security, is when we stopped for gas in Fresno, California. So that's where it started getting scared. So it's not as bad as people say, I guarantee you. People in Mexico are great. And if you don't know Spanish, which I'm not that good at Spanish, as long as you try, they love you. They're really friendly. And most of them kind of have some sort of English. But Spanish is a good one.
So when we went into Mexico with the dog, we were really nervous. We made sure we had all the official paperwork done, stamped and everything. Nobody ever asked us for it. I do recommend having it all done and having it all done here. We did the same when we were driving back into the States from Mexico, especially with the dog we adopted. All of the paperwork in Spanish. So I was really nervous about that. And again, we had not a problem implementing that. A lot of people fear doing something like this because they can't take the test of them. It's a lot easier to do. Sometimes it's just paperwork that has to be done. It's really getting an official, but there's possible. It's worth it.
What's really other shops?
We did add safety features to our boat. I have put netting around all of our lifelines. I put right across the back, and we have these little camera doors that go through into our cockpit in the back and in our trailer. Both of our dogs have really good life vests and harnesses and jack lines. So that when we are in that weather, they are jacked into the weather.
Oh yeah, they're always on
that.
that.
We have to watch them constantly. They're still comfortable on the boat. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and they love dolphins. or they hate dolphins, I'm not sure. But every time they see a dolphin, they go crazy. They go ballistic.
That's
They run
actually
up on
what
the
we
bow.
we're actually like this swimming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's been several times where we're on the beach and we see dolphins just offshore, just off the beach, and people will swim out there. So,
And then as far as making the passenger offshore and stuff, I took an old sail that we had, I cut it down, set it together, and made a litter box. And the dogs do their business, and we just tossed the litter box that they're missing, and it's back in place. It took us maybe 3 days to get them changed to a that spot.
yes, dogs are a great benefit to have on board, but they are somewhat limited. Yep. Speaking of dogs, Nika.
And this is us with our pit bull and our black dog, and then a French dog squad. Picture of the white bass. And then
This is Buddy. Yeah, so there's a lot of dogs out there. This is the cutest dog in the world. There's things about it. This big. Yes. What is it? Pomeranian? Yeah. But it looks like a toy. It acts like a toy.
Somewhere in Congo right now.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. If you're going to go to the Pacific, a lot of islands don't want your dogs there. I mean, even Hawaii. There's a long quarantine, that kind of stuff. So when we were, and our next trip is to Panama this year. We're going to Panama and spend a year or two. And then we're trying to make a decision if we should go to the Pacific or should we go through the canal and go to the Caribbean.
We're kind of waiting to find out. The owners said currently are, I guess, they're crossing the Pacific now. And he's small enough to fit in the backpack and people have the other system. But Jess has been taking her paperwork and has let me know that there are hoops to jump through, but it is possible to get it out to the Pacific too. And a lot of people choose not to go that way in the Pacific. Beyond that, I don't have a lot of information, so I didn't get much.
Yeah. Pacific seems to be a little bit.
Yeah.
But it helps if you have a dog that looks like a toy.
Okay, so this is an example of our dogs. We've got our sails up, and they're totally comfortable.
Yeah,
They just chill up there.
By the way, before you go on to the next one, this right here is a folding dinghy. Have you guys seen these folding dinghies? So look how tiny this thing, but this is actually 12 feet long, and it folds into a little thing. Unfortunately, we bought this really used, and we thought we could fix it, and I tried several times, and I couldn't. But the newer ones are awesome, and if you don't have a lot of room, these folding dinghies are really cool. Yeah, they can fit any market. That's the harness we got for the
Yeah, because we're gauged, and then you can see the weather cross around, so the cockpit is slowly in place as well.
Yeah, so this shows a little bit about the boat. This is the weather cloth around the cockpit area and the solar panels. 2 of the 4, the other 2 on the side there. Just another dog. This is an Opaz, I believe, right? The Mongolian Opaz, and that's our pilot. Oh no, that's our thing. So anyways, puppy parties are a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you use all kinds of
It's
puppies.
a daily event. We'll all meet on the beach for an hour or so. We'll have some beers and we'll watch the
All right. Paperwork before you take off. Passports, obviously. Visas, they're good for 180 days, $20 a person. Little story about the visa. You've heard of illegal aliens in Mexico and the United States, right? Mexicans. We were illegal in Mexico for more than half the time we get there. So it's important that you have a visa, especially when you go in. But if it expires, don't stress too much. We hear cruisers stress all the time, and they fly back to the United States so they can, cross the border and get another 180-day visa. We just realized that that's really expensive. We're just going to be illegal in Mexico. And to say the truth, we found out later that it's illegal for anyone in Mexico to ask you for your visa unless it's a border patrol person. So if they do, you can just tell them, I left in the boat. And that's what we do all the time. We say, I left in the boat. And then, so I don't have it right. And they go, okay. And let's go. A couple times, yeah. And then crossing the border, we didn't have a visa for 5 minutes, and 5 minutes expired. No problem. But if you want to be legal, then get your visa and realize it's only good for 190 days. Boat documentation or registration. If your boat's not documented, if it's registered in California or wherever. I would recommend documenting it because I noticed in a lot of countries, they don't really recognize or understand state registrations, but a nationally documented vessel, it seems to be the norm. So if you document your vessel, it'll be a lot easier to get through a lot of countries. The tip, which is a temporary import permit, is good for 10 years for your boat when you bring it in. It's only $51 at the border, and it's $45 if you do it on the website, which I have here for you in a minute. The only thing is, if you buy a boat in Mexico to do this, and it has a tip, there's a lot of legal hoops you got to jump through to make sure that you cancel that tip, temporary import permit, and then get a new one. But otherwise, if you buy a boat here and you take it to Mexico, as soon as you get to the border, and we're going to cover that in a second, the tip is pretty easy to get. List of valuables with serial numbers. Part of the check-in, they'll ask for this, but the big thing is if you have anything ever stolen, that kind of stuff, the serial number is going to be big deal. So make sure you write down like the outboards, if you have a Honda generator, if you have anything valuable, write all this stuff down and have it. Yeah, and it actually helped us retrieve the VHF radio once we lost. So have a copy of it on your boat. Dogs, paperwork, shots, that kind of stuff. Insurance. So insurance, it's required that you have Mexican liability insurance, and it's only like $100, 110 per year. So if you're ever going to go into a marina or that kind of stuff, it's required that you have that insurance. And you can buy it online pretty much anywhere, or you can buy it at the border. Hull insurance for your boat, it's about half the cruisers have hull insurance. And what that is basically if you sink your boat or whatever, your insurance company is going to pay for it. It's like having full coverage for your car. If you have an expensive boat, then absolutely get hull insurance. But if you don't have that expensive boat, then it's expensive to have hull insurance. It's not cheap. Only about half the cruisers have it. And my philosophy is, our boat costs $18,000, and I checked the insurance, and it was going to be almost $2,000 a year. That's just ridiculous. So I've got it. Yeah, it's a personal decision. Fishing licenses, $46 per year, and it's not like here where you have to have stamps for different types of fish. Once you buy a fishing license, you're golden, right?
You do have to have a fishing license for every fishing pole.
Yes. Yeah, so which is weird. They change this all the time, so make sure you update yourself on the new. It used to be you have to have a fishing license for every person. Yeah, now it's every pole.
What you don't use a pole?
What's that?
What you don't use a pole?
You're not allowed.
Well, that's why we only have one fishing license and one pole, but we run 3 hand lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hand lines are fine; they're not poles. So, but at least
that's a prohibited for farm.
right. That's a prohibited sport. And the other thing, by the way, lobsters. It's illegal for you to collect lobsters, right? And it's not an ecological thing; it's an economical thing. And the reason why is you can buy them from Mexicans that collect them or trade them for them, but you personally can't go down and grab them and catch them yourself, which is kind of a gray area for us in our minds, anyways. Because we think, we're in this secluded acreage with nobody around. We see tons of lobster. We want a lobster. We're not going to look at it. So we've collected a couple. So this is the website that you can get your fishing license, and actually you can also get a couple other items ahead of time before you leave if you wish. We got everything at the border, which is fine. It looks fine. But you can get it ahead of time if you wish. And it's the San Diego Department of Fishing. The last thing is have a crew list ready. Everybody that's on your boat, because as soon as you're going to get your tip and temporary import permit, they're going to ask you for a crew list. What we did is we got all of the stuff that we needed, and we got copies, lots of copies. They're going to ask you for tons of copies. So get like 3 or 4 copies of everything when you get in. This is checking in. So cruise port, which is on the Ensenada border, So it's kind of a racket the way they set it up. So in Ensenada, you can't anchor anymore. You have to take an order. It is the check-in port to Mexico. So when you go in there, you have to take a slip in a marina. And we were a little bit apprehensive about that, but it was the best thing ever, because in cruise port, they will take you to all the different places you need to get for paperwork, the fishing license and the TIP and all this stuff. They'll drive you around free of charge. They'll help you fill out all the paperwork and all that stuff. And what's the price? $51? $45 for the slip and all that help.
We talked to people that did the whole check-in process themselves, and it sometimes took them up to 2 days just because they're running around from building to building to building to get all this stuff. Because you have to go to this place, and then you have to pay at this place, and then you have to go to another place. And hiring these guys did it, we had it done in an hour. It was in an hour, everything was taken care of, and we were in Mexico.
Yeah, so it's not a bad deal out there.
Yeah.
And we were there just for a day.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, but anyways. Yeah, so that's the rest of the marina. Very friendly. All right. Things not to bring, too much food. We did. Mexicans eat too, so everything's available. There's Walmart's there, there's everything, right? Most of the big cities have this stuff. Going to a Walmart or going to, they also have, Chedraui's, which is a large chain. Yeah, and Mega, right? So there's several large chains. But we've noticed that if you go to the small mom and pop place, you get fresher food and it's cheaper. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Plus they're fun to go to. They're a lot of fun. A lot of activities. Let's see. Guns are illegal in Mexico and you'll go to jail right away. And they'll confiscate the drugs. So bring guns. And the same with drugs without a prescription. And if you have a marijuana prescription, it won't work. So I'm talking about pharmaceuticals. A lot of countries, there's a big controversy about if you should bring a gun for security, that type of stuff. It's not, in my opinion, again, you'll get all kinds of opinions. In my opinion, it's just not worth it. I mean, there's just, the crime is it's less than it would be in the States overall. And there's other ways to protect yourself, especially that things like that. There's other ways to protect yourself if you have an issue, but guns really isn't the answer, because you can really lose a lot. Yes, in Mexico? Yeah, everything in Mexico is cheaper, especially drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs and that kind of stuff. And everything's available. And you can get a lot of stuff without a prescription. Yeah, a lot of stuff's available without a prescription. And I'm going to get on a soapbox for a second. Healthcare in Mexico is phenomenal. I had hernia surgery in Mexico, I had kidney stone in Mexico, and I had root canal in Mexico. All three of those the medical care was excellent, as good or better than you could get in the States. As an example, when I had the hernia surgery, by the way, the whole thing, from top to bottom, beginning to the hernia surgery was $1,500, right, which is probably a deductible one for the insurance, right? And after the surgery, the surgeon drove me around to get the drugs and then drove me back to the dock so I could get on the boat. Yeah, can you imagine an American surgeon doing that? It's not going to happen. So the medical care in Mexico is amazing. And the kidney stone that I had was free. No charge at all. Yeah. Didn't pay a penny. I was there all day. Fed me meals, did CAT scan, ultrasound, all that stuff. Didn't charge anything. I asked him when I left, how much do I owe you? And they said, nothing. So it's free. It's in our Constitution. Healthcare is free if you can't afford it.
Yeah,
imagine that.
I can feel like this some people saying it.
Yeah, and it's really good. I mean, the hernia surgery, I was a little bit apprehensive at first, but when I walked into the surgical room, I was one of 2 patients there, right? And I waited about 3 minutes before the surgery started. I went into the operation room and it was pristine and all the top-notch brand new equipment and everything. So medical care is phenomenal. Yeah, really nice. And by the way, then I came back to the United States. I got into a bicycle accident and had a concussion. Went to the hospital for 2 hours. We got bills from 4 different places for $2,200. And I didn't have insurance because I just got back to the United States. So it's, whoa, it was a big, huge eye opener. So anyway, so I'll go with that. All right, cool. This is Ensenada. A lot of people will tell you that they don't like Ensenada, and I don't understand why. It's awesome. It's real Mexico in Ensenada. You really get to, I mean, all the open air markets and that kind of stuff. You really feel like you're in Mexico, as opposed to some of the other, like Cabo San Lucas, just a big touristy area, right? That's okay. And you know, that kind of stuff. But Ensenada was really nice. This is Turtle Bay. So Turtle Bay on the way down. If you guys, has anybody done the Baja? Nobody. Yeah, one person. Okay. And they stop in Turtle Bay. That's their first stop, I believe. Turtle Bay. Turtle Bay is a really tiny town. When the Baja, by the way, if you don't know what the Baja is, once a year there's a big regatta that Latitude 38 kind of sponsors, and there's usually one to 200 boats basically that make a trip down to Cabo San Lucas. Yeah, it's a cruisers rally. They call it a race, kind of, but it's not really. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. I've done it twice, but it's a lot of fun. But their first stop is Turtle Bay. Turtle Bay is pretty cool. When they get there, it's actually quite a large town because everybody comes from everywhere because there's going to be 200 boats there, 100,000 people there. Right, so a lot of people come there to service them and give them, you know, they have a party for them and all that stuff. As soon as Baja leaves, it goes way back down to a sleepy town. And everything was closed when we got there. We followed the Baja. They went way, I mean, they get down there in a week, and we took 5 months or something. So they go way too fast. So we stopped in Turtle Bay. The only thing, if you're going to stop in Turtle Bay, my only suggestion is watch out for the fuel dock. There is one fuel dock there. There used to be 2 people that supplies fuel. But the guy that supplies fuel now, let's just say he's a little less than honest. I've heard tons of stories like they'll fill up the tanks and they'll go, okay, that's 80 gallons. And they'll go, well, that's funny because my tank's only hold 60. So how did you put 80 gallons in my tank? And you know, that kind of stuff. And they did stuff to me when I was delivering boats north that were really questionable. So make sure that you know how much fuel they're putting into your tank, and make sure they quote you a price before they start, and that's what they charge you when you finish. So you can, because they'll up the price suddenly. They'll tell you it's $4 a gallon, and then you'll figure it out. You'll multiply it by pesos, and you'll realize you just paid $6.50 by the time you're there. So just be really cautious about giving fuel in Turtle Bay. But otherwise, the town is really nice. It's a small town, and it's beautiful. And it's a great anchorage, by the way. It's the best anchorage along the Pacific side of the Baja Coast. Mag Bay, Man of War Cove. So this is Man of War Cove. It's a small little fishing village, and it's just south of Turtle Bay. We were there for 10 days, and we were the only boat there. And it's a tiny little fishing village, and it's a great protected anchorage. I don't know why we were the only boat there for 10 days. Is that me?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of stray dogs, but they're very nice. There's Mika making friends. And that's actually the size of the fishing village right there. I mean, there's maybe a few houses up there, but that's pretty much it. This is the restaurant that they opened every time they saw our dinghy coming in. Just for us. Every time they saw our dinghy coming in.
They had free Wi-Fi there, so we were able to use the Wi-Fi, and there was a cell tower nearby, so we were able to use the cell phone. The gentleman that runs it only speaks 2 races of English, fish or shrimp.
No, tequila.
Tequila.
Yeah, you know tequila. Wait, maybe I understand it.
Yeah. But I would sit with him for an hour or 2 hours with my Spanish book and we would have conversations. It was fantastic. We almost couldn't wait. We just fell in love with it.
So the only thing I would say about there is the only thing that we got into, again, a fuel issue. The fuel, you can't get fuel there, but there's a local town, and this is how they transport trucks back and forth. It's really cool to watch.
Also, they do when you need fuel, they put you into these big Hondas. They take you across to San Carlos where you can fill up your fuel, and then they charge you over the pay fuel for now.
Yeah, and I didn't know when they took off. So it's a long trip. It's probably about an hour by these dinghies going
Yeah.
30 knots, right? So they took us into this town to get fuel, took me into the town to get fuel, and I had carried cans, right? And then I think I spent $65 on fuel. And then when he got back, he informed me that it was $50 per trip. And I didn't know that when we left. So you can take your boat up there, but it's a long, windy trip down this channel that's really tight.
So if we done that ahead of time, we would have negotiated the price before we took the trip in the town, so it just brings
Yeah, but he was a nice guy.
He was a nice guy, and we got groceries and everything too, so. But we weren't aware, so always, when somebody offers you a ride somewhere, they come in, make sure you find out how much they're gonna charge you first.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just also Man of War Cove. It's a little place. This is remnants of a hurricane that came through years ago. Just tons of seashore, mountains of shell. It's pretty cool. This is climbing rocks up in, this is in Cabo, I think.
Yeah.
This is one of our friends. So the other thing is we realized when we first took off, we were really nervous about, like, we're the only people that are stupid enough to leave for money. But then we realized we ran into other people that actually also do this. Yeah, quite a few. And we were surprised. And this is Richard. He's a good friend of ours now. This guy is a character beyond anything you've ever met. And there's a lot of characters, a lot of fun people. And he's been sailing the Sea of Cortez for the Gulf of California. You can call it the Sea of Cortez, but you say that to Mexico, they're not a big fan of Cortez. So yeah, it's a Gulf of Mexico. So anyway, he's been sailing down there for like 6 years, and he's never bought a boat. He's constantly given old boats and fixes them up and he sails them around until they sink and then he's given another boat. Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. And he's crazy, and he got me to do some crazy stuff like climbing up these rocks, these cliffs in Cabo. Yeah, another thing at Cabo. This is the beaches of Cabo. And he's, I don't know if he's ever been there, but if you go to this beach in Cabo, it says don't swim because there's undertow and huge waves. You did it anyways, and I learned why they say don't do it. It literally can move your head over the heels and take a lost perspective. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. Let's see. Mazatlan, another good town that people bypass. This little anchorage here,
It was pretty not
yeah. Yeah, there is Mazatlan. There's the old area where we stayed at Club Nautico on this acreage, and then there's up north. There's marinas, large marinas, and that kind of stuff, with no anchorage. So you can go up to the north section, and if you're going to go for a marina, but we're not marina people, so we went down to the anchorage, which most people say, "Oh, don't do that. It smells bad because or it's sketchy." We never had any problems there, and it only smelled bad once. And the reason it smells bad is because there's a water treatment plant around the corner. When the wind blows the right direction, you smell it. But we were there for a total of, yeah, so I think, 10 overall, and we smelled it one day. But it's a great anchorage, and Mazatlan's a great town. Again, it's a Mexican town. You really feel like you're in Mexico.
Club Nautico, there's a place for Tabarini, because there's a locked gate area, so we knew that everything's safe. And had showers for us 2 days, and then had Wi-Fi. And it was 50 places a day.
Yeah, which is probably less.
Yeah, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I think it's 17, now it's 17 pesos per dollar. It's safe right now.
And more. We
That's-
did lunch at one of the outdoor, I know.
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't pick that one. This is the little area where they allow you to use Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
It's been cool, and with the desk set up and everything.
You'd be surprised Wi-Fi's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's free, almost everywhere. So it's awesome. It's an anchorage, a little better picture with small anchorage and lots of one. Yeah, Manitou Bay. This was one of my favorites, but not the biggest.
I love them.
Yeah,
The pennies, the museums are very, very, very bad.
Yeah, the
The
hennies.
museums.
Yeah,
They call them pennies.
yeah, Mexico they're called hennies. And yeah, they're like mosquitoes, but they're super tiny. You can't even see them. and they fight and they leave a horrible welt on you when they fight. Well, let me rephrase that. They leave a horrible welt on her. They didn't bother me at all. And I don't know why. I taste bad, she tastes great. So and actually she had to get allergy medicine because she was just covered in these things. It was really scary. But there's our dinghy. There's a hard dinghy. That's the old dinghy that we used to row back and forth. And there's our boat out there. And this is a super well protected anchorage. I mean, it's huge. Go back here. It's a massive anchorage. You can see the size of it. And this entire anchorage is like 10 to 15 feet deep, right? And there's almost no waves and no wind in there at any time. So we did anchor far away from shore, just like everybody else, and that was an attempt to stay away from the headaches. There's no swims. But as soon as you go to shore, they were alive. The dinghy, by the way, the hard dinghy that we spent the first year on, these things on the side here, these are they're called dinghy dogs, and they're inflatable pontoon type things. This dinghy without them was really squirrely, and if we tried to go in, like in a lot of places coming down the coast, when you try to go to the beach, there's large breaking waves, right? And if you have a big inflatable dinghy with a big outboard, you can ride those in. If you're rowing a hard dinghy, they'll flip you over, right? If you're not careful. If you have those little dinghy dogs or some sort of inflation on the side, we never flipped. They kept us level at all times. So,
I actually